Rope-a-Dope Radio. Hey, what up, boxing fans? This is the Rope-a-Dope Report. Got a little sound issues at the start there, but we're good to go. Looks like we're just fine. Anyway, I am your host, Chris Carlson. We are back. Of course, you can check out the Rope-a-Dope Radio podcast at any time on blogtalkradio.com/ Rope-a-Dope Radio. You can also check it out at under iTunes as well. Look it up, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Anyway, we're live stream here like we do most of the videos. Uploading just takes too long, so I prefer to do it this way. The topic of this live stream upload will be a lawsuit, Al Haymon versus Golden Boy. And right about now, they are deep into litigation, right? There has been an update in the case. We know that Bob Arum and Al Haymon had a lawsuit, or not Haymon, but Bob Arum filed it against Al Haymon, claiming monopoly and several other things, whether it's holding venues and whatnot, and they mutually dismissed it and came to an agreement, and they're actually talking now. They're on talking terms. Yeah, they haven't made the big fight just yet, but they have made some smaller fights, and we're close on Broner and Pacquiao. It sounds like every time they got close and we were, on agreement, Broner would keep raising the price. But anyway, that's neither here or there. This is about the Golden Boy, Al Haymon, right? I think it was $300 million or something like that. It's an antitrust. It's an antitrust lawsuit, right? So just going to kind of give some information, an update. This will include info, an update, and it just talking about stuff, right? And some of this information, a good chunk of it will be from Paul Gift on Twitter at MMA Analytics, just so you know, and also fightopinion.com, I believe, is where I got the other information. Let me double check on that. And this is for the deposition. Let me make sure that I got that. Yeah, fightopinion.com. So anyway, this isn't about claiming who's going to win or how much money they're going to settle or who's right or who's wrong. It's not about that. It's literally just giving you some information in an update from their deposition. So there's two experts, one for Golden Boy and one for Al Haymon. And like I said, the thing about this lawsuit, as it pertains to the Ali Act, they're trying to claim that, Al Haymon, being a manager and a promoter, is, breaking the Ali Act, which would be breaking it for sure. No doubt about that. So that's what a lot of this lawsuit is about. Like I said, whether you agree or not, I'm not here to sit there and judge which is which. And when it comes to this lawsuit, to be honest, before I get into this information, this is a dirty business. Okay, so everybody's got their hands dirty. When you dig for dirt, which is what Golden Boy is doing, sometimes you end up with dirt on your, or not sometimes, you end up with dirt on your hands. And that's what you'll get out of this information a variety of ways. I mean, just a fighter signing with, let's say, HBO. Obviously, Showtime does deals as well. But as we know, during the 90s, Tyson went to Showtime as well. We know Floyd went to Showtime later after the HBO stuff. But there's a lot of contracts that have been signed. Roy Jones, there's been a lot of contracts. And also Golden Boy themselves, when Richard Schaefer was there and Oscar and him were, together, they had an exclusive deal with HBO. So right there, that would be trying to monopolize some things and also breaking the Ali Act. And what I mean by that is if a fighter signs with HBO and they have a right to say, no, dude, you can't have that fight. Well, isn't that not protecting the fighter, an issue where we like Kovalev Stevenson, right? The fact that there's no way that they were going they were going to sign him, Kovalev, because technically he was a free agent at the time. But that, Kathy Duva claims that would have been an issue there, and why go one fight when I can have long term, and just the issue of even a fight like Golovkin and Jacobs. Let's say there was, some of these fights go to purse bid, although this is a different situation with the 75-25, and Jacobs doesn't want it to go to purse bid, whereas Golovkin wants it to go to purse bid because of the 75-25 split. But just in general, when we go to purse bid, would a fighter under HBO be allowed to go to another network and then come back? So there's a lot of this. I mean, Chris Algieri recently said that he wasn't getting the information that he should under the Ali Act. So the Ali Act is getting, broke a lot. It's not something that everybody's respecting. Let's put it that way. So anyway, on the Golden Boy side of things, right, you have Gary Shaw as their expert witness. And on the other side, it's Kerry Davis, who worked with HBO in hand with Al Haymon there, right? So we'll get some quotes and information and update from what they have to say. And here is a sample of, I'm not going to read it every little word, but I'm going to read a chunk of it. So this is Gary Shaw, right? The boxing promotion model currently employed by the Haymon defendants. I have known for Al Haymon for years. In fact, wait a second. It just popped off. Okay, so he talks about how he's known him. He's promoted with him, talking about how he got into the industry, Vernon Forrest, of course, Mayweather and all that, right? And he's also received copies of some of his current management and advisor contracts with boxers and the television network agreements he has entered in with respect to the premier boxing champions, right? In my opinion, Mr. Haymon continues to operate in the same manner he did when I first worked with him. Now, some of this is cut off, so I may mess up here because some of the words, it's kind of tightly on in this tweet where I have this information. So bear with me. Anyway, Mr. Haymon is a boxing manager. He signs boxers to either management or advisory contracts, which provide Mr. Haymon have exclusive control over the career, right? Based on my review of a number of these contracts, it's in my opinion that these agreements give Mr. Haymon control over not only the management of the boxer, but also the promotion for the fights. Although he calls himself a boxing manager, it is in my opinion that Mr. Haymon acts as a boxing promoter. Based on my personal experience with Mr. Haymon, my review of the television contracts, like I mentioned, I can state that Mr. Haymon regularly negotiates with television networks, sponsors, venues, other providers of revenue, whether it's overseas or whatever. He sets the budgets, purses, controls all aspects of the promotion of the fights. In my opinion, in his model, Mr. Haymon fulfills all the traditional duties of a boxing promoter, right? And that's something that we've heard, we've talked about. Like a lot of people just call him a promoter, right? And Mr. Haymon performing all the traditional functions of a boxing promoter. The licensed promoter is simply putting his name on contracts, right, that have already been negotiated. So that's that whole renting, that whole sham promoter. That's what Bob Arum also said as well, that he's using, beyond like Lou and that, he's using these guys just to have a fee. So he's dodging the rule because he says, well, technically these guys are the licensed promoter. I'm using them and they get the fee, much like he flipped the model, when he had Floyd with Golden Boy. Golden Boy would get a $3 million fee, and they would get, some fights on the undercard, yada, yada, yada. So that's what he's saying. So he says those television contracts, provided that Haymon will arrange for a promoter to be involved in the PBC events, disclosures, qualifications, experience, activities. Because of this, the television contracts confirm that the networks view Haymon as the promoter and are comfortable that he will be responsible for all aspects of making the show happen. By calling himself a manager while acting as promoter, Haymon is not constrained by it just got cut off. Constrained by state and federal, let me zoom in, regulations governing boxing. When he acts as a promoter and negotiates the essential contracts for the promotion of the event, Haymon does not worry about the compliance, with the regulations regarding financial disclosures, right? So basically they're saying this is how he's getting by it, the sham promoters and that type of thing, right? So Gary Shaw is basically saying, hey, I saw the contracts. This guy's a promoter, period. You know what I mean? Now, the other side of it, Kerry Davis, right? These are some of his comments to Gary Shaw's comments, right? And it goes, here, let me make sure maybe I'll blow this up so I won't have as much of a problem. I've been asked to respond to an expert report of Gary Shaw. This is summaries of opinions. This is what this is for Kerry Davis, who was formerly with HBO. Okay. I think this is much better. There we go. While some of what Mr. Shaw states in his report is consistent with experience working in boxing program at HBO programming, I disagree with his opinions in certain key respects. First, Mr. Shaw is incorrect in broadly asserting that the boxing promoters take significant financial risk. While some promoters do and are willing to take that risk, the business model pursued by many promoters is to first secure television license fee and sometimes the site fee that cover most or all their expenses in promoting a fight card. In this respect, many of these companies operate more as packagers rather than promoters. And that obviously, is something that we've talked about quite a while in the States, how promoters over the years have slowly but surely relied on, the licensing fee. And that's what they do. They just, they've kind of gotten lazy. And this is not pointing out this guy or that guy. This is just in general. We've been having these conversations for quite some time. Another thing Shaw said was the name, right? The calling championship caliber boxers is actually a problem too. The PBC, Premier Boxing Championships. Champions. That's what he's talking about. So it says, secondly, Mr. Shaw is incorrect in suggesting that boxing stars are sometimes called championship caliber boxers. In my 16 years in boxing, I do not recall ever hearing or using this term in the course of my business dealings. There are champions, there are pay-per-view stars, there are contenders, prospects, and opponents, but I am not familiar with the term championship caliber boxers outside the context of what Mr. Shaw said, right? And that part was cut off to where I couldn't even read it. So some of this is getting the information the other way. And so that's kind of helpful that way too. So because some of that I just can't read it. Third, Mr. Shaw is incorrect in asserting that it is exclusive. Wait, okay, shoot, my computer just froze up. Okay, there it comes back. Exclusive providence of boxing promoter to deal with the television networks in connection with televised boxing events. While I was at HBO, several prominent managers dealt directly with HBO on behalf of their star fighters. Mr. Haymon, who also dealt directly with HBO, was not all that unusual. Negotiating with a television network on behalf of a boxer does not make you a promoter. Fourth, Mr. Shaw is incorrect in asserting that the PBC series and its creators somehow have an unfair advantage over the existing industry stakeholders like HBO, Showtime, Top Rank, Golden Boy, or that the PBC series boxing model is somehow bad for the boxing industry. The PBC series certainly has made the boxing business more competitive, which may be uncomfortable for those who were content with the existing arrangements. But if Haymon Sports succeeds in growing the audience for professional boxing by broadcasting fights on network television, broadly speaking, that should help, not hurt other industry players, right? So he's saying, it's good to an extent, right? It's good to an extent. Now, I'm not here talking about the PBC and if it's a failure or not, nothing like that, okay? I'm just talking about in these terms. And so this is kind of the back and forth that they're having in the courtroom right now, okay? So obviously they're trying to say, hey, this is just a sham. That this is a way to monopolize. It's an antitrust lawsuit. Couple more facts before I get out of here. I'm not going to bore you with all this stuff, but a couple more things came out recently, back and forth in this stuff. And basically Haymon's, and this is coming from fightopinion.com, and it says Al Haymon's two main legal arguments. First, that TV networks are the promoters, because after all, a lot of the times there'll be a list of approved fighters, right? And this is Showtime and HBO, so I'm not taking sides here. Let me get a quick drink of water. So this is just in general, okay? This that has nothing to do with being biased. I mean, for instance, Luda Bella had gone to HBO and got Felix Diaz approved to fight Terrence Crawford, right? He had just done that. So Peter Nelson said, yep, we approve of that. But John Molina and a couple other names were approved as well. They ended up going with John Molina. So this is what this is talking about, talking to Oscar. Haymon's attorneys grilled Oscar De La Hoya over the role of HBO in helping producing boxing events. De La Hoya called the HBO producer because they help. He called HBO a producer because they help, with the television broadcast. Haymon's attorney asked if HBO is helping as a producer. How can you not call them a promoter? The counter to this argument was illuminated by Golden Boy during their deposition. It says the advisory contracts with the fighters, according to the deposition, Haymon admitted that changes were made to the agreements in September 2015 regarding promotional agreements, and that provisions were rescinded regarding restrictions. Haymon reaffirmed his position that he simply steers fighters into promotional agreements, but that it's up to them in the end, basically. Court filing, quote unquote here, defendants have never sought to enforce and have agreed to waive the contractual provision that allows them to select a boxing promoter. So they were saying, this guy won't allow it to get signed. And as we know, when Richard Schaefer was the CEO at Golden Boy, he had a lot of fighters signed, but he also had, especially a new crop of guys that were coming up with Al Haymon, he had a bunch of those guys not signed. And some of that was due to a variety of things, right? And that's where it gets, shady, right? But also I remember, I believe it was Sean Porter saying, I'm not signed to Golden Boy because I want to fight a top-ranked fighter. Well, if you're signed with Al Haymon, that was going to be a problem right off the bat. But some of that was Cold War. Some of that was the shystiness of the PBC and Al Haymon and the investors trying to buy Golden Boy. I know there was some issues on how, the fighters that were signed with Golden Boy got off of Golden Boy. They had that settlement, and Golden Boy did get money for it, and they got money for the Richard Schaefer, for him leaving too. So just a couple more pieces of, so basically they're saying, well, if they're producing all this stuff, they're trying to argue that aren't they part of the promotion or being a promoter? If you're going to call me a promoter, doesn't HBO make a lot of decisions that would be a promotion as well? Let me see here. He also waived the exclusivity of the major. Oh shoot! It got cut off. Of all the major broadcast networks and commissions for his fighters in the PBC fights. So basically change that. This is huge important. This is hugely important to focus on. Haymon must convince a federal judge that he's not a promoter because he could face important legal issues regarding the Ali Act. If the judge rules that Haymon is a promoter and not a middleman, this is where it gets real ugly. However, here's the problem. And like I said, when you dig dirt, your hands get dirty, right? You get sweaty and dirt turns to mud, and then everybody's in the mud. And that's where this business is. That's why I never, I think Top Rank taking a prospect to a star is the best at it. I think Eddie Hearn right now is the top promoter overall. But I also think, early 2010s, 11, 12, you could see Golden Boy really starting under Schaefer, really starting to produce. And then by 2013, when they're kicked off HBO all the way, and it was, HBO and Top Rank against Golden Boy and Showtime, I thought they were definitely producing the best talent, right? So basically, it's not about who's right or wrong or this or that. Everybody's got dirt on their hands. And the problem when you start digging it, because remember, Bob Arum, who, by the way, is a lawyer, right? Golden Boy, Oscar has lawyers, but Bob Arum is a lawyer. And it's another thing to talk about, another thing to think about when it comes to this. Luda Bella has had plenty to say on this, right? And he's one of those, perceived sham promoters, which I don't believe that for Luda Bella, but he is under that sham promoter alleged, right? So, and he actually helped write the law, and he went to law school. So we got to start adding all this stuff up instead of saying, oh, he's, there's going to be a settlement or Golden Boy's going to, kill him. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just giving you information. But remember, Bob Arum said they're going to dig up the bodies. We're going to find out who killed Hoffa. No, but you know what I mean? And then they just dismissed it, mutually dismissed and settled on something. And we didn't hear some big payout, whereas we did hear that with Schaefer, and we did hear that with Heyman's fighters getting off Golden Boy, that ugly breakup, right? And there was some issues about when the contracts were up and how they could buy out, and there was some really shaky, or not shaky, but shady stuff that, Al was able to get over on Oscar that way, but Oscar ultimately got some money for it though too, right? That was part of it. So here's the thing though. So we're saying all this stuff about it does seem like there is an issue. And we've also heard originally that the investors actually tied themselves for a small revenue stream. The investors tied themselves to Al Heyman's 15%. So there's no way. A lot of people think this is a big scam, and I'm not here to say it is or not. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit there and say, I don't know, But a lot of people think, well, Heyman's not losing any money because the investors put up the money, but yet he's making money because he got the 15%. Well, if he took that for 15% that the investors are paying for these fights and the time buys and all this, that would for sure be the Ali Act right there, completely. But they said in an article early on in the Sports Business Journal that the investors get that 15% as a small revenue, stream. So if he's not taking that, that may be enough of that, edgy, borderline yellow tape stuff that a guy like Al Haymon and his lawyers and other people around it, cover their tracks. Now, maybe he covered his tracks in some way, and maybe the other stuff, this is where it's going to come out that he didn't, or there's no hiding it, that type of thing. So anyway, the reason why I'm saying this is because Golden Boy, remember Golden Boy had, I'm not going to say a 100% exclusive deal with the Barclays, but they had a deal with them, meaning they had first dibs, right? I think Provodnikov and Algieri during that time was like the only time Golden Boy, that was the only show I think there. Otherwise, Golden Boy had it all. So having exclusive options like on HBO, even fighters having deals. A lot of this stuff is very shaky. Is very shaky when it comes to the Ali Act. They just don't. It just doesn't get brought up to court because everybody's trying to get there. If you're a manager, especially a promoter, and you're going to sue HBO for this, well, guess what? You may not win, and two, you're not going to get your fighters on there. You know what I mean? You're not going to get dates anyway. So, but here's the thing, and this is where Golden Boy, this is where when you have a deposition and you have discovery, things get dug up, like I mentioned. And this is what Haymon's side argues. They claim as to why his fighters can't fight for Golden Boy. In fact, this is the quote here. In fact, in what is clearly designed to prevent a boxer from retaining a manager such as Haymon Sports that may fully protect the boxer's interest during the covered period, Golden Boy has added language in its promotional agreement. Okay, so they added some. They changed up their stuff. I don't know the date when they changed it. Because like I said, Haymon said that he doesn't have an exclusive deal with the networks anymore. That was September 2015 when he decided to drop that. And we have seen a time buy on CBS Sports Network as well, by the way. But it goes on to say, Golden Boy, I'll just pick up right where I was. Golden Boy has added language in its agreement. And this is what it says. The promotional agreement that it says the boxer will not, I repeat, will not retain, hire, consult with, not even consult with. So you can't retain, hire, consult with, include, or involve any person or entity as a manager, advisor, consultant, or any type of representative not previously disclosed to the promoter without first obtaining the express written consent and approval of the promoter. So you have to get Golden Boys, you literally have to get their approval to see who you can sign with or even talk, consult. It says consultant, and it said representative too. So that's shady as hell too, isn't it? I mean, what I think, I think there's some shady stuff on Al Haymon's side with this stuff too. I'm just being honest. This is something that's dug up that we didn't know previously. A lot of people have talked about how Haymon's contracts and how he gets around. He's not even the manager, but he's the advisor, and how the contracts, the way he wrote them, definitely is an issue, right? Well, this is an issue too. You can't retain, hire, or consult or include without their permission, without first obtaining the express written consent and approval of the promoter. So basically, I'll tell you who manages you. And a violation of this provision results in liquidated damages against the boxer. Thus, there exists ample alternative market-based explanation for why Haymon Sports managed boxers would not want to sign to Golden Boy in this promotional agreement. Now, was this under Schaefer? Was it in the months when he was gone? I don't know, but clearly that's an issue. Clearly that's an issue. That's totally that. I mean, if that's not a breaking an Ali Act, I don't know what is. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what comes of this. I think that's about all I got for you at this moment. I think it's like November 28th or something like that is the next time that they meet up with all this stuff and get it figured out. So I'll update you then. Anyway, like I said, I'm not here to say, they're gonna roast Haymon here and they got him, or this is a frivolous lawsuit. I think it's probably in between. But we'll see. We'll see where this goes. Anyway, just a little bit of information. Like I said, you can check out the Rope It Up Radio podcast anytime on iTunes. Subscribe, download blogtalkradio.com/Rope It Up Radio as well. You can listen to it live every Wednesday. You guys enjoy the night. I'm going to be back. I'm going to do a quick Pacquiao Vargas recap and then see what's next for Pacquiao. Peace.